Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode 45 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jemmy, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today I'm going to share my first Podcasting 102 topic with you, a fan favorite on Clubhouse, my lesson on creating disciples for your show. This episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this. Remember when I had you examine your ecosystem back on episode 35? Well, those lists you made are going to become very useful here. We talked about examining your business network, your personal network, your industry network, your local network, and your online network. And that effort was to uncover launch partners, potential guests, and monetization opportunities. I'll include a link to that episode 35 on examining your ecosystem in the show notes in case you missed it. Well, today's lesson is cornerstone to all of that and will be a concept I revisit with you a lot on various future lessons because organic word-of-mouth growth is still the best way to grow your audience and build your relationships. But that doesn't mean that growth has to be slow. My advice today can be a booster shot for your organic growth opportunities, so you really want to lean in. And this is a Jaime-ism known as my disciples lesson. This is my favorite metaphor to use in explaining the growth opportunity that is available in podcasting. It's a piece of advice that comes from religion, but it's not religious. Here it is. The reason that Jesus' message spread so successfully throughout the world isn't because he was the only one walking around telling everybody about it. No, he had 12 disciples, and those 12 disciples believed in his message just as passionately as he did. And then they walked in their own directions, further spreading that message. So the key to your show's growth is to find yourself some disciples. Find people who are just as passionate about your message and mission as you. Look for social media spaces, Facebook groups, clubhouse rooms, meetups, etc., that serve the interest that you do. This is where your potential supporters are, your listeners, guests, sponsors, and other kinds of potential partners. Also look to connect with other public and private organizations that want to support you, such as an association in your industry. Then, for the social spaces in particular, don't be a fly on the wall. Join those groups, participate in those conversations, and provide good value, the same value that you provide on your show. Don't go into those spaces with the mindset of promoting your podcast. That will never come off well. Remember all I said about never doing an infomercial? Same thing, same reason, same concept. Don't go into those spaces just to promote your own stuff. And you actually risk being banned from those spaces if you do. So instead, just add value and be authentic. People will come to know you, trust you, and seek out what else you have going on, like your podcast. And for both social spaces and more official organizations, proactively reach out to the organizers. Let them know about your show and how well your intentions line up with their mission, and see where the conversation takes you. They may invite you to take a more active role as an expert in their organization and do some presentations in front of their group, or you can invite them onto your show as a guest. Similarly, you can have group members on as guests as well. The goal is to foster a relationship that gives them every incentive to help spread the word about your show. Boom. Now, a few more notes on implementing this idea and concept, because of course we all hope that our guests and sponsors and friends and family too will share each episode like wildfire. But that doesn't really always happen. In fact, don't be surprised if it rarely ever happens. And on future episodes, I'll share some tips with you on how you can have your guests share your episodes, how to get them more engaged after the fact. But you want to create disciples for your show beyond just your guests. So rewind back to episode 35 if you haven't gone through my exercise yet of examining your ecosystem. As mentioned, I'll include a link to it for you in the show notes. But once you've examined your ecosystem and you have your lists fleshed out, then reach out to the formal organizations in your space and have those conversations. Become involved with and embedded in industry networks, associations, publications, and conferences. Meet them, get to know them. Reach out to the informal groups that serve the same value as you are bringing on your show, like on Facebook or Meetup, and have exploratory conversations just to see how you can help each other grow and reach the goals of your missions because you're on such unified tracks. And pitch yourself as a story to your local media, your newspaper, your magazines, your television news networks. In fact, they may have a story in the works that would be perfect to include a quote from you in, but they'll never know unless they know you. So reach out to them and let them get to know you. I'll take a deeper dive on future episodes on the kinds of materials you can include when reaching out to these kinds of folks, your one sheet, your sizzle reel, that kind of a thing. But the point of this episode is just to get you thinking and on the track of putting together these lists and imagining that they can be your partners in some way, and get into the habit of cultivating contact lists and then utilizing them and reaching out to these people and starting to form relationships. Also, create your own projects and opportunities. Don't just rely on what already exists, like conferences and other organizations. Put together a panel episode for your podcast that gathers together those people who can really help you to get in front of your target audience. Sometimes your guest is a guest because they're a great guest, but sometimes they're a guest because they're a great guest and. And in this case, a panel episode can gather a whole bunch of people who can be a great guest and, because they can also help get you in front of your target audiences. So who are those key folks that can be kind of figureheads and thought leaders that you can gather for a panel episode? Then, as a bonus, as they share your episode, you'll get that organic growth boost you're looking for. Another idea is to create a live online event. Now, I'll use an example that wasn't my own project. This is my friend's project, but Alex Sanfilippo, the man behind Podmatch and many other brands in the space, had this virtual Q3 event for his Pod Pros community. I got to be the MC. It was totally awesome, but that's not the point. I'm sharing it because it's a great example. And in this case, it was a move for growth of his audience in that community rather than growth of an audience for a podcast. But the same play can be made for podcasts too. And this online event involved a lot of people from his community, brought in speakers, made it high value, all that kind of thing. So think of what kind of online event you can have that can involve others, be something that people want to invite then even more other people to in order to experience it, and that can create a buzz for your podcast. Horse Radio Network, as an example, used to do an annual 12-hour live broadcast. I used to help produce it. It was super fun. And it involved tons of hosts and guests and listeners and sponsors and prizes, you name it. It was massive for audience growth every year because it was this event that created a buzz. The people who were involved in it became disciples, spreading the word like wildfire about how exciting and awesome this event was going to be. And then everyone they talked to who maybe had never heard of Horse Radio Network before now tuned in. And it wasn't HRN making that one by one effort. The organic growth happened through word of mouth that was bolstered by their event. So the first idea was a panel episode. The second idea is a live online event. And third, you could put together a Vox Pop episode. A Vox Pop episode is an episode where you string together very short interviews on the same little question. So, for example, at PodFest 2017, I asked a bunch of podcasters why they were passionate about podcasting. And then I strung those quick 5-minute interviews together for a great episode about PodFest that was shared not only by all those different guests, but also by PodFest itself, which was huge for me back in 2017. And I repeated that effort when building Florida Podcast Network. My Finding Florida co-hosts Glenn and I attended various conferences throughout Florida, creating these Vox Pop episodes that had massive impact on our growth because it had multiple guests who were excited to be part of it. Now, there was a lot about those partnership opportunities that I could go on and on about, but sticking to the subject matter of this episode specifically, what it did was all those different guests were then excited about the experience of being interviewed live at a conference, a short little interview, and they shared that episode. They became disciples. So they had a massive impact on our growth. More importantly, on the general awareness of the show and FPN and Florida's travel and tourism industries. We recorded these Vox Pop style episodes at Visit Florida's Huddle conference, interviewing a bunch of travel and tourism board reps, the Miami Boat Show, which led to an amazing future deal with an RV company, and Florida's Restaurant and Lodging Association's conference. And that led to loads of help for future Finding Florida adventures. So Vox Pop episodes, especially at a conference or other live event, can accomplish a lot. Another idea for you to create disciples for your show is rotating guest co-hosts or content contributors. I've mentioned my client and friend Annie Kushner's show, The Wedding Biz, on this show before, I believe, and it's a great example for this too. He has a group of elite event industry professional friends who make regular appearances on his show, and this creates the opportunities for these high-profile folks to share multiple episodes of his podcast. And Horse Radio Network makes a similar approach with having repeat vets and trainers appear on their shows. They are super excited to then share those episodes, which gets those HRN shows in front of the friends and the family and the clients and the audiences of those vets and trainers over and over again. And finally, get listeners involved in your show. Never forget about your listeners. They are the most important thing, and they can be the most important driver for growth. I'll have a fuller episode on that later, but for now, as a few quick ideas, share the listener comments and the answers to your questions that you get on social media or via email, wherever they come in from. Share them right there on your show. When the people who have answered you or comment on you, engaged with you in any way, when they hear their input shared or answered on the episode, they'll share that episode. They'll be so excited about it. And if you shared something that you've picked up from one of those social spaces, like on Facebook or Meetup, what have you, one of those social spaces that's serving your audience, then mention both that organization and the specific commenter by name. Mention both. Also, share listener reviews that you've received. Same thing. It's all about jazzing them up, about being heard and seen and felt like they're part of it, right? Bringing them into your community encourages them to spread the word that much more. Also, encourage listener voicemails using either their phone's voice recorder or by setting up a tool on your website. If you go to Florida Podcast Network's website, floridapodcastnetwork.com, you'll see a tool there to record voicemails with a quick click of a button, and it sends that message to us there at the network. And that's through a tool called SpeakPipe. It's super easy to set up and works really, really well. So you can encourage on your show listeners to either go to your website and record something or record something on their phone and send you those messages. And then again, like I feel like I'm beating a drum, share it on the show, and then they'll share that episode. Because again, if you can share a message from a listener on the show, your listener will then share that episode out. Also, don't be afraid to bring things into the real world. Meet your listeners, sponsors, your guests, and anybody else involved with your show in real life. Go grab lunch, a cup of coffee, a cocktail with them, whatever. It'll be an experience that they'll never forget, and they'll tell so many people about it. So go do it. It's a lot of fun, and you'll create great memories for yourself as well. We did that a bunch on Finding Florida as we traveled around. We would meet listeners or share a meal with a guest or whatever, and strengthen our fan base one person and relationship at a time. And finally, send thank you swag to your guests. A well-placed bit of thank you swag on your guest's desk or whatever, someplace in their house. It can be a conversation starter between them and a person that you don't know outside of your network, a friend of theirs, whoever comes to visit, whatever. So send thank you swag and let the word spread that way. And that's the key. Getting people you know to talk about your show to people you don't know. Create your disciples. Up next, I'll continue with my next 102 topic, and it'll be on the very important topic. It's all about your listeners. So if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure that you do. And you can meet me on Owl for a one-on-one call about your podcasting questions. Sign up with my referral code PL954123 and get your $10 credit. But until then, I have a whole host of free tips for you on my website. Just check out flintstonemedia.com/free tips, and links to both will be in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in to Podcasting Your Brand. In this new chapter of the show, I'm revealing how you can harness the power of podcasting to expand your brand. So come and pick up what I've been putting down since 2014. Avoid common mistakes and propel your podcasting and branding forward. And if you have questions or are interested in becoming a sponsoring brand of this show, don't be shy. Reach out to me at Jaime, spelled Jaime, at flintstonemedia.com. It's producer Jaime signing off for now. Remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So turn that mic on.